Hello everyone, Reza here. This video is a deep dive on the modern table control experience in PowerApps. I will showcase tips and tricks around how to work with the table control, make column widths dynamic, font size dynamic, responsive table control, how to filter the table control dynamically based on views, and a lot more. So let's check it out in action. Let's begin with creating a responsive Power App. For that, I will start with the page design and pick any of the responsive screen layouts. I'll pick split screen. This will create a Canvas app that will have that specific screen layout set for the home screen. When you build a new Power App using this technique, Settings Display has the feature scale to fit automatically turned off. And this is what allows screens and controls to automatically fill the available space. And this is what makes your Power App ready for responsive design. Also, under updates, I will turn on modern controls and themes because I would like to leverage the modern table control. To create a responsive screen with the modern table control, under new screen, we have screen templates, and one of them is header and table. I will go ahead and utilize this. So this builds me a screen that has responsive container controls, has the header control baked in, and in the main container, it places the modern table control. The table control is what I can connect to my data source. For the first scenario, I'll pick Dataverse as my data source. I have a table called employee record that has different types of columns, and it stores information about employees in my organization. In order to connect this table control with my data source, when you select the table control, we have this data option right here. And with Dataverse, I can simply search for my table name. Here is the table called employee record. I'll select it. This will go ahead and make the connection for the employee record table to my Power App. Back to the table control data property, I'll select employee record. It will go ahead and add the columns from my table. If you have AI suggestions turned on, the initial set of columns that is selected is recommended by AI. I also have the option to click Add Fields and select any other columns. These same options are also available on the right-hand side properties panel. Fields is what defines which columns you want to list out in the table control. If you need to reorder the columns, you can simply drag and drop to reposition the columns. You can also remove columns that you do not want to show as part of the table control. At this point, if I preview the Power App, it is a responsive app. If I was to view this app on a tablet device, you can see how the entire screen is responsive. Let's change the orientation to vertical. And if I was to view this on a mobile device experience, the table control completely transforms itself to show the data in a list view like experience. And this is possible because the table control has a property called reflow behavior. By default, it's set to reflow. Depending upon the real estate available, it will either show the grid layout or the list layout. One challenge with the table control has been the fact that if the size of the screen changes on the fly, it tries to fit all the columns that I have added as part of the table control into that real estate that's available for the screen. Let's say I add additional fields. So this adds more columns. Now if I preview this, reduce the width, it tries to squeeze in all these columns in that single view, which is not a great end user experience. And to get around this, in the table control, for every column that you've added, we have the column controls. Each of these column controls have a width property. Now by default, it is set to 0. So it will take the width that is available based upon the real estate on the screen. Right now I have the employee ID column selected. The width is 0. Let's say I change this to 150. So at this point, if I was to preview the app, you will note that the employee ID column will get that specific width that I have defined. The user does have the option to change the widths of these columns while they are playing the app. However, every time they land on the same screen or they open the app again, these columns would reset back to their original widths. What I can do is select a column, hold the shift key and start selecting all the other columns. Every column in my table is selected. The width for all of this, let's say I set it to 150. No matter the width of my screen, the grid control is respecting the width for each of those columns. And in this scenario, I get a horizontal scroll. The same width property, we can make it dynamic depending upon the screen type the user is on. In PowerApps, the screen has a property called size that has an enum of values to let us know whether the user is viewing the Power App on a mobile device or a tablet device, desktop experience. To use that property to dynamically define the width, the app object has a property called formulas. Let's create a named formula for this. I'll call this dynamic table width equal to. I'll use the switch function to switch on the size of my screen. The screen in my case is called screen2. So screen2.size. If this is screen size.small, I'll set the width of my columns to 100. If it is screen size.medium, I'll set it to 150. If the screen size is large, 200, else I'll set it to 250 and plug in a semicolon to complete my named formula. So this formula will dynamically calculate the width that I would like to define for my columns. Dynamic table column width is the name that I have given to this formula. Back to my table control, I'll select all the columns and the width I will set to my named formula. Preview. Widescreen experience. All the columns have the width 250. Notice as the width of my screen changes, the spacing between the columns starts reducing. The table control has styling and theming options as well. I can set the font for the headers. I can set a font size. I can pick a font color. The header font color property, I can also make it dynamic, so it picks it based upon the color of the theme. app.theme.colors.primary. So notice as my theme changes, the colors change. I also have options to change the font size, color, and font weight of the data that is represented in the table control. Let's use that same dynamicity concept to define the font size of the data in my table control. This named formula is what I will apply directly to the font size property of my table control. So notice the font size of the data will now change depending upon the width of my app. I would like to sort based on the name in ascending order or descending order. You can sort on country, date, number columns, choice columns, and more. Since I'm connected to Dataverse, it also gives me the total row count. My table has 1002 rows. Counting functions are delegable with Dataverse as a data source. Is the table control loading all the 1000 records in one go, or is the table control loading the data in a delegable manner? And to validate that, let's go to Advanced Tools and open Monitor. Monitor allows us to monitor activity within our app to understand the performance of our Power App. Monitor launches and it is connected to my Studio session. Back to my Power App. Let's go ahead and sort this based on the name in ascending order. So I took an action. Let's explore Monitor. See, it makes a network call out to Dataverse and it fires the get rows action. We can see the details of the request it makes to go and get the data. Behind the scenes, it directly queries the Dataverse API to go and get the details. I was sorting based on the name column in ascending order. Here is the query. I only have certain set of columns that are visible in the table control. So you can see it's firing the select query to only get those columns. It is also getting the total count, and the response that we receive from the API returns data in batches. Now, if the user wants to see more data in the table control, of course, they would have to scroll. And notice as I scroll down, if we explore Monitor, it's gone ahead and executed another get rows action. This it does in order to get the next set of data. And if I keep scrolling, it will keep performing the batch loading of data in an optimized manner. All of this is handled out of the box for us by the table control, so we don't have to worry about performance. Filtering. With data sources like Dataverse and SQL, one additional option we get here is the option for views. These are the views that we create in Dataverse tables. In my Dataverse table employee record, if I go to views, this is the list of all my views. When you connect to a view here in the table control, it will respect the filter criteria that has been defined in the view. It does not take into account which columns are a part of the view. So for example, if I pick active employee records, this will return all the employee records that have the status active. And if I pick inactive employee record, this will respect the filter criteria of that view. I do not have any employee record that is inactive, so it shows no information. Let's take a scenario. I would like to see all the employees that are hired in the last 5 years. For that, I'll create a view. I'll give it a name and click create. I'll click edit filters, click add. Here I can define complex filter criterias for the view. I can also filter on related tables. I can click on add row and define my filter criteria. Now notice I do not see all the columns here. That is because for any column that I would like to perform a filter on in the view, I need to make sure that the column is searchable. So I have made hire date searchable. Notice hire date shows up. So hire date is in the last X years, and X I'll plug in as 5. I'll click OK. So this will only list out those employees hired in the last 5 years. I'll click save and publish. Now if I head back to my Power App, refresh the view, notice I have the option hired in last 5 years. Let's pick this. Notice how the table control respects the filter criteria of the view. I only have 184 employees that have been hired in the last 5 years. When I pick a view for the table control, if you explore the items property of the table control, it's filtering based upon that view. And all the views of a table, this enum has the names of all my active views. Let's add another responsive container here that allows the user to pick the view. To create that responsive container, I'll simply pick the header container and copy. Go to the main screen container, right click, paste. That adds the new container that I will rename to my filter container. I'll select this, reorder, and move it one step up. Within this filter container is that header control, which I will delete. And now here, I will go and add a text control. I'll call it view. The filter container, I'll go and insert a drop-down control. So I have a drop-down control here where I would like to list the views. If I go back to the table control, this gives me the list of all the views. So I'll copy this, head back to the drop-down and use the formula choices of that enum. And this now generates a list of all my views, which the user can select. This drop-down control, I will rename to DRP view. And now all I have to do is for my table control, items property, filter my table. The second criteria needs to be the name of the view, which I will select as my drop-down control dot selected dot value. Nothing selected will bring all the data. But now user has the option to select views. Dynamically, it is filtering the data depending upon the view selected. The big advantage is we can create complex views by simply leveraging the view designer experience, which has this user-friendly way of defining our filter criteria. Plus, if I was to publish this app, and if I was to simply run this app, here is that view selector. Now, if I make any changes to these views, without making any change to my Power App, when the user selects a particular view, it will respect that change. In fact, if I add new views, I'll add a view called corporate employees. Business unit equals corporate. Okay. Save and publish. I just created a brand new view directly in the table. I have not made any changes to my Power App. If I simply refresh the Power App, that view will be listed right here. And if I select it, it will go ahead and apply that filter, which was business unit corporate. I have 240 employees that are in the corporate BU. What if I only want to list out specific views in the view selector? To do that, I'll try and follow a naming standard. For example, let's say I would like to show corporate employees. The name of the view, I'll simply begin with a space. I'll do the same for hired in last 5 years. Go back to PowerApps Studio. For the drop-down control, where I was using the choices function, I will apply a filter condition to it, where starts with is the condition that I will apply. The value starts with a space. So now this will only list out the views that have a space at the beginning of the view name. Corporate employees, hired in last 5 years. If I pick corporate employees, my business unit is all corporate. I do not want to show this column at all for business unit. All I have to do for this is select the business unit column in the table control. It will have a visible property. This I can change dynamically. My drop-down control.selected.value should not be equal to my employee record tables views dot corporate employees. So notice it does not show business unit. If I pick hired in last 5 years, business unit shows up. Annual salary. It's showcasing the data in this specific format. Currently, the table control does not allow us to change the formatting of the columns. I want to show a salary mapping. What we can do in Dataverse is we can create a new column and we can use a column of type formula. These formulas are simple PowerFX formulas. If I start searching for annual salary, you can see how it shows that column. So I've gone ahead and plugged in a formula which says if the annual salary is less than 70,000, you put the value entry level. If less than 150K, put mid level, else senior level. And here I can get a little creative by using emojis as well. It automatically picks the output format, which is text in my case. I'll click save. And just like that, I have a formula column created. Now I can use this column in my table control. Fields for my table. I will add salary map. Salary I will remove. And salary map, I'll bring it to the front. The table control shows me that information. Search for employees by name or job title. This control I've renamed to txt search. The table control already has the filter for the view. So I'll add the formula search on top of this, the text to search, txt search.value will give me the text entered, and search for this in the column full name, and search for this in the column job title. I want to search for the text Rafa. I have one employee. Director. This will search in the job title. Let's also apply the view. So now it will be a combination. Directors hired in the last 5 years. And the second scenario, I'll connect the table control to a list in SharePoint that has different types of columns, text, choice, dates, person. This list has over 500 records. I'll go ahead and connect to that SharePoint list. And my table control, I will connect it to that SharePoint list. The table control will show the data from the different column types in SharePoint. My list has over 500 records, but because counting is not a delegable function with SharePoint, the table control starts with 500 to begin with. And of course, as the user scrolls, it will load data in batches, optimized loading of data. And as I keep scrolling, the counter also keeps getting updated. SharePoint connection does not have the option for views, but just like I added the filter options for Dataverse, I can apply similar filtering options for SharePoint as well. If you enjoyed this video, then do like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and thank you so much for watching.